Okay, so I've never denied being a geek, right? I'm a nerd, no doubt about it. Um, and I grew up a wrestling fan. I stopped watching wrestling for a few years, and then when the Goldberg NWO thing came back, I started watching wrestling. I was in my late teens at the time. But, I mean, I watched when I was a kid the Hulk Hogan Ultimate Warrior days and all that stuff. I was always liked it. And then, as I've grown older, it's been one of those things where, for a while there, I stopped watching again. And then as I've had kids, I've picked up watching it more. And the biggest change since I started watching wrestling is the advent of women's wrestling. And it's not a new thing, but it's this idea of equality on the wrestling front. And I just don't agree with it. Watching wrestling, when I watch wrestling with my boys on Friday night, we watch SmackDown or something like that. It's like I want to watch professional football, right? If I wanted to watch high school football, I would watch some local bull crap or whatever, and that would be it. I'm trying to be good about the swearing. But when it comes down to, like I say, the time I want to spend watching this, I don't live this or anything like that. Like, I'm a kind of a geeky fanboy in that, like, this morning, there's a few different... I like Simon from What Culture. I don't know what it is about him. It's the way he talks in his tum-tum. I don't know. That was a bad Simon impression. But still, I like Simon. There's a few other shows I like to watch that give rundowns of what's happening. And I have to admit, I'm kind of a sucker for it. I'm entertained by some of it. Some of it is stupid, like the Demon fighting Roman Reigns, and like, I mean, again, I want it to be a little bit believable. And if you see Roman standing next to Finn Balor, who has some of the most effeminate movements I've ever seen, where he's flipping his hands up, and I got nothing against gay people or anything like that. It's just to me, it's just silly. It's like when I'm supposed to believe Doogie Howser is the ladies' man in Harold and Kumar, and he's clearly not. And you can tell if you watch close enough that he's not pulling that off. And actually, he's what you would think a gay guy would think, like an exaggerated straight guy would be. It's almost like a stereotype straight guy. It's kind of weird, and it's just, again, I have no issue. One of my kids might be gay for all I know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. It's just weird that I'm supposed to believe that this tiny, effeminate guy can beat up Roman Reigns, who's just a monster. I mean, he's just a monster. In like, standing next to him, I would be very intimidated by such a huge fella. When Brock Lesnar and him face off, that's believable. And again, I know it's wrestling, so it's fake and it's whatever, but it has to at least be believable. And women's wrestling across the board isn't believable. It's slow. It's obviously choreographed. They do all these weird, like, extra moves that take off, like when the person has to stand there and let you it's kind of like with luchadors even, or at least the cruiserweight wrestling. When a guy stands there and lets you, like, climb up him and then place yourself on him to be able to do the move to him, or the woman, it's dumb. As the watcher, I go, why don't they just drop that guy? Just drop him. He's climbing on you. Just drop him. But that's what I mean. So I there's some of these wrestling shows, What Culture and whatever, that the Cultaholic and all these, where, like today I was watching these two guys. They were recapping last night's stuff, and one is this really weird little guy who's so super into wrestling, and he's got a beard, and he's got dirty glasses, and he's got, like, dirty hair, and has his little doggy sitting in his lap, and he's like the stereotypical wrestling fan. And then he's got his buddy. His buddy is a decent looking guy. I mean, he looks like he shaves his head, and you could see where he's obviously not as fortunate as my 42-year-old butt. Text But that guy could get laid, but the other guy, like when they start talking about how they're offended because the women's wrestling isn't getting the push, right? Well, if women's wrestling was viable, was a moneymaker, they would make a women's wrestling federation. They would bring back Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. They know they can't make money off of women's wrestling, so then they try to like shove it into. Can you imagine if you were watching a professional basketball game, and halfway through the game, or at the end of each quarter, you got to see WNBA for 10 minutes. And you had to stop what you were doing, stop being into the program and all that to watch these There's a reason why nobody watches the WNBA. It's awful. It's like watching bad high school guys. I mean, they can shoot, they can dribble, but you watch you watch basketball for the slam jams and just the awesomeness of watching these giant men who you can't do things that you can't do. Just like you watch wrestling to watch these giant men do things and power bombs and all this crazy crap that you can't do. You're a regular human and you can't do these things, and these are superhumans and they can do these things. And the problem that I'm seeing more than anything is that it's okay for me to think this way. Everybody tries to say it's not okay for people to think that I'm offended by the women. Again, then make a women's wrestling and watch that. But like, for me to sit here and have to pretend, and every single one of those guys, every single one of the cultaholics and what cultures, all those guys, they all say the same thing, and they all talk about women's wrestling like it's on par with men's wrestling. And it's just not. It's not. And I don't think I should be forced to watch it just because there's hot chicks.